So, bienvenidos. We're excited to be doing this tasting. We were not sure how it was going to sell, and ultimately ended up being very successful. So we thank you for those of you who are interested in the canned fruits of the sea. Please make sure, if you don't have them open already, get your cans open, get your wine open. Highly recommend grabbing a few ice cubes to try the vermouth with. You may find that this vermouth is a touch sweeter than an average vermouth, and so a few ice cubes really help balance it out. Also, nothing wrong, be like the Spanish, get an orange twist, a little orange peel to throw in there, and we hope you enjoy this. We're excited, and we've got some really excellent products, and we're also going to be joined a little bit later on by Gabe from Wild Fish Cannery out in Alaska, so they're 5 hours behind us or something. So we appreciate him joining in the late afternoon at his time. And without further ado, I'm going to let Zach introduce the next part of this and go over a little bit of the format.
Yeah, as Will mentioned, we're so excited to do this tasting. It's different than ones we've done in the past, and we've kind of had Conservas fever at the store for a while, and so we're just so excited to delve into these delicious things. Like always, please go ahead and try things, but make sure you don't eat everything before we get to it, so save some in the can. I think that shouldn't be a problem tonight. Yeah, leave yourself something, but mostly this is your tasting. So, try the crackers, make fun combinations. I imagine there won't be as many chocolate pairings going on tonight. The chocolate and the sardines is not suggested, but enjoy with the crackers, try different combinations of things, and we'll kind of weave in and out of the wine pairings and have a couple recipe suggestions. But I think one of the things that dawns on me, first and foremost, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, is unlike canned land fish, there's not much recipe to enjoying these, right? Like a little toast point is almost all you need for most of these, but we'll probably still come up with some cool things that we do to enjoy these and different kind of tapas ideas. So we're so excited for you all to come together and kind of delve into this world of tapas. And we love starting these tastings by talking about the wine in case there's anybody out there who's not looking to open up both wines. We'll kind of introduce both of them, but like I said, we'll leave in and out of that pairing discussion throughout the tasting. So the first one we have is vermouth, right? We're having this really cool new horizon of flavors with Conservas, so why not, even in wine, make sure we're kind of pushing our boundaries and trying something different. It also plays up this whole idea if it's made together, grows together, it goes together. And vermouth, this one especially, is coming from the Basque region, and so much of this kind of fish traditions are either Spain or Portugal, France, these surrounding regions. So, and all of these regions have vermouth or vermouth-like drinks. These really herbaceous wines that are, similar to Amari. I was just saying before the tasting began with Will, it almost drinks like Amari Light, if you guys are familiar with those Italian bitters. And I think that this idea of herbaceousness and floral products going with fish kind of transcends most fish traditions. I was thinking about aquavit and herring before. If any of you guys have Scandinavian friends, this idea of drinking super botanically driven alcohol while you eat really flavorful fish transcends. This vermouth is just delicious, and I think Will had a great idea with a little orange to kind of spark it up. I think you guys will enjoy it with everything. It's been our favorite so far. And then chocolate, just a little south, I believe, of where this vermouth is being made, is this chocolate. And chocolate is this beautiful wine-style collection of a couple different grapes, and it's one of the smallest regions, or one of the least amount of hectares are devoted to chocolate production within all of Spain. But it still has so much love in it. There's You know, it's a very simple wine. Often you get this effervescence because it's kind of a youthful wine. It's not something that you're supposed to make and age for all these years. It's not taken seriously. It's kind of a fun bar wine. And I think kind of similar to this roving feast that is a tapas experience, we have this beautiful light chocolate to keep it going. So I hope you guys enjoyed it throughout the day. And now we're going to jump into the fish. And I believe we're starting with the Fishmael.
That is correct. So Fishmael is actually one of the younger companies in the canned fish game, but one of the oldest companies represented here in the tasting. Actually, the oldest company is actually the vermouth producer. They've been in business since the early 1800s. I believe they're one of the oldest companies still operating in Basque Country. But Fishmael started as a tapas bar in Barcelona. And in Spain, you know, it's a little bit of what we're trying to reproduce here. You know, canned fish, like we wrote in the blog a few weeks ago, is not a last resort food when you're on a camping trip. We, here in the United States, we take canned fish camping with us. We eat it when we don't have time to make a proper lunch sometimes. It's not looked upon in the same way in Spain. And in fact, oftentimes, if you go to a tapas bar here in the United States, you get some octopus on potatoes and like lots of other little prepared dishes. But frequently in Spain, a traditional tapas bar, you might walk in and they'll just have a whole bunch of little canned fishes, some olives, things on toothpicks, and it's not quite as composed. It's really about this, the essence of the sea preserved so that you can eat it down the road, but done extremely well. In Basque Country, they call those little skewers, you know, an anchovy, an olive, a pincho. And some of these things are perfect for that. These sardines are an excellent example of this kind of pincho idea. And, you know, look at the size of them. You know, they are tiny. This is not the smallest size that Fishmael makes. They make one, this is, I believe, 20 to 25 sardines per can, which is kind of how they grade a lot of these things in size, is how many sardines per can, how many mussels per can. And they make one that's 35 to 40. So, you know, we have seen cans, you've probably seen cans where the same size can as we have in front of us has 3 sardines. Those can be delicious, but they also eat a lot different than these little, you know, finger-sized, beautiful silver fish. Fishmael sources like the absolute best sardines they can get, primarily fishing for them in the fall. Zach and I were on a call with a representative from their company a few weeks ago, and they really try to get the best sardines in September for their premium line, and that's it. I imagine that sometimes they may have to go outside of that, but they really do an exceptional job. And I love
35 to 40.
No, not these.
No, I know.
I love the balance of these, and I grew up, my parents can attest to this, they're not on the call. I grew up not really digging canned fish, and even as I came to like more and more fresh fish, sardines were not one of them. And if you had told me even 6 years ago that I'd be standing in front of an iPad doing a presentation about how delicious some sardines were, I would have told you were completely full of yourself. But when it really changed for me was my wife and I were in Portugal. We were hanging out with this Portuguese family, and we went and we got some fresh sardines in this town called Matosinhos, which is just north of Porto. And it's a really, really famed fishing town. It's definitely like many fishing towns, both in the United States and Spain, kind of fallen on hard times as there's competition from other countries in the canneries, or some of the fishing stocks that used to be the primary, driver of the industry have been depleted. But you go there and there's just a row of restaurants and they're all serving fresh seafood. And the number one thing is really sardines, Sardines. You go to the restaurant, they've got a grill out front, there's sardines on it, they put some salt, a little bit of olive oil on them, and some garlic. And you say, I want 3 sardines, I want 6, I want 12. And you sit down with a plate of sardines, maybe you get a couple sides. You get some simple wine at like, a bottle in Portugal, $3. The meal is transcendent. I was thereafter a convert to really good fresh sardines. And in the absence of fresh sardines, I was talking with one of our distributors today who I occasionally buy seafood off of, and I said, do you have any fresh sardines? And he said, I've got frozen. And I was like, you can keep them, I'd rather have the canned ones. Because they're taking the product at its best and turning it into something that's comparable. It's not the same, but it's comparable in quality. Whereas if you've ever had a fresh sardine that was a little long in the tooth, or a frozen sardine, it's just not the same quality. It's not the same experience. These fish, sardines and mackerel, they're oily. Oily fish tend to break down much faster than a lean whitefish. So things like, sardines, mackerel, salmon, herring, if you can take them and can them at their peak right after you caught them, that's even better, than freezing them and serving them down the line, or trying to ship them fresh halfway across the world to get them on a table here in Detroit, and the scales have fallen off, the eyes are dull. You can tell what it's going to taste like. It's not like this. So, any thoughts on this or comments about these delightful sardines canned in olive oil?
Nothing yet, Will, but I'm going to show the Anthony Bourdain video as a nice precursor as well, so people can get a little bit more on this, and then we'll see what questions pop up as we go through.
Surprising and enlightening attitude towards seafood. My friend Lucy Garcia has taken me about a half hour north of Barcelona to the seaside village of Vilassar de Mar. What I love and hate about this country, though, is that just in this one block, as we walk up to the place we're going to eat, I'm seeing 6 other places I want to go in and eat something. Werner looks like a million other old man bars, a local joint. The uninitiated might be forgiven for being unimpressed. Oh, come on. My head is swimming looking at this stuff.
Okay, we're going to get, not this, we're going to order something a bit more special.
Yet what you are seeing is in fact some of the finest, most delicious, and most expensive seafood in the world. Here, the best stuff comes straight off the boat and into the can, about a year ago.
Almejas de aquellas, las top.
Miguel Tapias is an ordinary barkeep. He's the 4th generation in his family to run Espinalera, and it was his idea to start selling canned seafood products, ranging from razor clams to cockles, mussels, and Otoro quality tuna.
He wanted to expand the business and decided, why not go and get the best products where they're available at their freshest. And so he goes himself every year to Galicia as soon as the season starts. And he sometimes personally buys the grapes, takes them to a cannery where everything's done very manually, very, very carefully.
Rest assured, this stuff bears no relationship to the can of smoked oysters you ate stoned and desperate at 2 in the morning back at college. This is the world's very best seafood. And here's what's so mind-blowing. It only gets better in the can.
You want to hit it?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
So, apologies for the slightly choppy audio quality there, but that was the late great Anthony Bourdain visiting the Espinalera Tapas Bar in Barcelona. And again, you know, that's how they started. They started serving these things made by other people, and then they started making some sauce to go on conservas back in like the 50s. The wife of one of the owners used to make this vinegar sauce, and they would serve it on clams and mussels and various fishes. And the sauce was a good hit. Their bars were very successful. And then eventually in the 70s, they got into actually sourcing and canning their own seafood. They have since really become a force in the country, and there are a lot of superb conservas makers in the country. Out of most of the cans that we, you know, out of the 15, 20 plus cans we sell, they're almost all Spanish. We've got a couple Portuguese things in there, a few French items, and, you know, obviously Wild Fish Cannery from Alaska, but pretty much all of these big names come from Spain, Portugal, and and France. The tradition is superb, and it's a cool culture. I think it's a really cool culture. And if you've had a chance to try both of the wines with stuff, you may not have been a vermouth drinker beforehand, but you may realize why we chose to do it. The Albarino, or the Chiccoli, sorry, we're doing Albarino next week with the shellfish. The Chiccoli pairs very well with a couple of these. It's not bad with any of them, but I think the vermouth across the board does exceptionally well, including, you know, this next fish, which is from Ramon Pena. These sardines with a little bit of Padron pepper, I tasted them at the Fancy Food Show in January. I think was the first. No, we were carrying them before that. I got them in, I tried them. I don't have them tonight because we gave you guys the last one, and I had to order more seafood in order to get this tasting done, because we were like at 12 attendees last Friday or Saturday, and then somehow over the weekend we ended up at around 20. And when I order most of this stuff, it takes me 5 days to get it. So I placed a rush order Monday morning to get more sardines, and we still ended up with Zach and I just trying these sardines and sauce from the same company, but it's not the same as the ones you have. You have the sardines and Padron pepper. They're small, they're delicate. The Padron pepper just gives like a beautiful hint of, you know, vegetable flavor to it. You may or may not get some heat with it depending on your sensitivity and which Padron pepper went into that can. Padrons are really interesting in that, you know, 10 to 25% of them actually carry some heat, but you never know which is which. And I've had cans of these that have a little more heat than others, but the little bit of added flavor from the pepper, I think, is a great way to show how the contrast between a completely simple, unadorned, tiny sardine, just in olive oil, and then how it can go so well with so many other flavors. Any questions or comments about either one of the first two sardines? Has anybody tried sardines canned for the first time or never had them before? Or if they've had them, they've been like, you know, dollar can stuff from, you know, the GFS or an Aldi type situation, yeah, but never had something that was designed to be gourmet.
We do have a couple comments. There was Jameson's loving this one with the vermouth. There was also a question earlier that Zach answered in the chat, but good for you to mention as well to the people who aren't paying attention. No other preservatives other than oil for these?
That is correct. Most of these cans with the exceptions of seasoning, you know, the preservative is really heat, oil, and the absence of oxygen and salt. You know, I don't believe any of these things have any preservatives whatsoever. It's just kind of, it's like, it's not what they do, and it's not the nature of what they're seeking to achieve in these businesses. I could be wrong, you know, I don't have all the ingredients listed in front of me right this moment, but I know for a fact that the ingredients on like the Espinal sardines, you probably have the box in front of you, but I believe it says olive oil, sardine, you know, sardines, olive oil, salt. So they take them, cook them fresh. Sometimes the sardines are fried before canning, which is, I believe, the case with these Ramon Peña sardines. Actually, that's the case with the ones in sauce that I have. The Padron peppers are clean and packed simply in the can.
Perfect. Another question for you, Will. You know, I know you like heat. Someone asks if you like a little extra heat. What hot sauce do you recommend?
So we sell this Espinal, you know, salsa Espinal. We sell it in a regular and a mild version. But it's a vinegar-based hot sauce. I mean, I don't think that this recipe, while it happens to be very good with these, I don't think you'd be, you know, misguided if you were to, like, if you love Tapatio, throw some Tapatio on some of these. You know, if you love Cholula, I actually would probably personally choose Cholula over Tapatio because I think it's a little closer to this, but you could go any number of directions with a vinegar-based hot sauce. That's where most of them are. If you don't like the vinegar, or let's say you're doing something that's canned in a more acidic brine or canned in vinegar, you know, sprinkle a little bit of just chili on it. I do love heat. Some of these things, I think, you know, personally, the yellowfin tuna is definitely helped with a little bit of that vinegar and heat, you know, and we can talk about some of the contrast with that and the ventresca as we get down the line.
Perfect. I know someone asked about the pairing. Zach, I don't know if you want to talk about that right now. Transition over to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. And thanks, Dan, for asking that question. It's a great observation. You know, the question was, do we approach pairing this with the same idea that we usually do? And we still use the scale, but for me, it was a very different thought process. And for Will really kind of quarterbacked this tasting. But I think that this is much more of a discussion of secondary flavors and kind of minor flavors and giving a product a showcase. I sometimes talk about how it's almost impossible for the cheese to be boss and the wine to be boss. When we're talking about our more common pairings, something needs to lead, just like dancing, right? And tonight with the fish, there's less confusion, right? It's such a bold flavor, fish itself, that it's in charge. And the wine is really meant as an accompaniment. And that's true of the cheese, but I still think that the approach is different. Like the chocoli is so bright and such a burst that it doesn't really accentuate much of the fish. It almost cleanses, right? It almost becomes its own palate cleanser and helps keep you wanting more and keeping your mouth fresh and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that that's fundamentally different. And the vermouth has such a silkiness, and I think that that also plays with the textures quite a bit. So just to kind of run through the concept, because I know most of you have been to our tasting, so I'm not going to go into the same amount of depth. But, you know, pairings is such a dynamic kind of conversation between foods. We always like to use that grading scale we always talk about. So -2 is like when you have orange juice and you brush your teeth in the morning, everything's bad, right? hopefully absolutely nothing comes close to a -2 tonight. That's not what we're looking to do. And then a -1, we see this at a cocktail party when we used to do these large gatherings and you're trying a bunch of foods and wines. Something's harsh, there's a contrast, right? And not in the nice way, right? We talk about contrasting pairings and complementary pairings, but this is a clashing, not a contrast. 0 is going to be so many food experiences, they either don't pair in this significant way, or we're just not giving the space, we're not being mindful of that interaction. And then +1s, one thing gets elevated, like when I'm cooking tomato sauce and I add my red wine, no favors for the red wine, but the dish is enhanced. And then a +2 would be both things going up. So, I assume that people have already experienced +2s. I know we have a slightly different product, but if you tried the sardines with padron peppers and you thought, maybe the fish was still a little too distracting, you didn't get enough of the vegetal nature, or maybe you tried the vermouth, and to Will's point, you thought it was a little too sweet, and the thickness felt cloying, but when you drank them together, the kind of floral notes and herbaceousness of the vermouth brought out that vegetal padron flavors that just season the fish so beautifully, or the spiciness and the salinity of the fish kind of cut through all that sweetness of the wine. And so that would be a +2. Both products are kind of enhanced. And I think we're going to find a lot of those tonight. And then a +3 is the peanut butter and jelly effect, right? All of a sudden, the sum of the parts are better than what started, right? And I think those are really special pairings. And I think that, we see and talk about that so much in cheese and fine dining. But, tapas culture is so, in some ways, antithetical to these great pairings of time, right? It's about a fun night where you're drinking and eating and hanging out at the bar and trying all these little bites. And so I think there is a little less of a, I guess the pairings are meant to facilitate a different thing tonight, right? They're about this fun night at the bar. It's not about the deep pondering of your glass in the same way. And so there's a different approach, I think. But I think they're all really special.
Thank you. What was the Jacques Pepin quote you said the other day, Zach?
Oh, yeah, Jacques Pepin made a Facebook quote that he said, "I'm done with serious wines. He's like, I just want wine that I can enjoy without having to wax poetic about it." It was a fun quote from a very serious man who drinks beautiful wine.
Or have it explained to him, and I think that there's something to be said for what Zach's talking about. You're not walking into a tapas bar in Spain at 9 o'clock like you might if you were Spanish. And searching for that perfect pairing. You're enjoying yourself, you're having some good conversation, you're eating great food along with it. That said, I do think that there are some pretty good pairings on this lineup tonight. In fact, vermouth and conservas are kind of a match made in heaven. So it's a little bit, it's cheating a little bit. We're often looking for good pairings with our cheese tastings, and we do enough of them that it can be. We get a lot of 2s and some 1s. 3s are rare, but I think there are a couple 3s up here. There's some definitely stellar combinations of flavors with especially the vermouth and a couple of these fishes.
I'm a vermouth convert, by the way. This is I'm enjoying this. I'm happy I'm not on the screen because I can eat more voraciously. So,
and that's hearing stuff like that, even when it's from my friend and business partner, is just, it's something that we love to do here, is to kind of expose people to a new idea, a new flavor. To that point, where next week I know we said we were going to do vermouth in these tastings in the descriptions, in consultation with our, one of our wine reps. we decided to do sherry as one of the wines and then an Albarino as the other for the shellfish tasting next week. And, you know, I have to admit, like, it's not, I love cream sherry. I love Pedro Jimenez sherry, the sweeter sherries. The drier sherries are not my favorite, but they're not my favorite to drink on their own, you know, and they're not my favorite to drink because I haven't probably had them the way he's drinking them, maybe with an ice cube, maybe paired with Conservas. I've never had that combination in my experience, and so we're going with this concept, and I think it'll be a fun exploration for all of us. He's got great taste, and that's what we hope to do. We like to expand our own horizons, and also at the same time give you exposure to new products that you may not have tried before. So that said, who has ever had mackerel canned at all, let alone in a muscadet wine sauce? I had not before I tried this product. We had been dabbling in quite a bit of Spanish Conservas since we opened from Ortiz, and I saw this. I had heard people talk about how good this brand was. I got the first sample I got was this product that people had repeatedly said was absolutely fantastic. And I got it, I opened the can up, and I was like, you have to be kidding me. It's the same company, it's Les Mouettes d'Avor, mackerel, just like this, but canned in a mustard and creme fraiche sauce. You open the can up, it is a beige, yellowish sauce, completely covering the fish when you open the can. It does not look like, you know, that. I tasted it, and I was like, holy shit, that is delicious. It really blew my mind, and I was like, I don't know how I can sell this. You know, it's a fantastic product in a aesthetically challenged liquid. We considered doing that one tonight, but I wanted to go a little bit more simple and clean on the flavors in the fish. Seriously, try it. You know, if anybody truly doesn't believe me that it's good, you know, I'll do the mackerel challenge with you, and we can open up a can together. You know, and if you hate it, you can punch that. But this company is really cool. They, like a lot of these people, they focus on a few things. Their primary focus is mackerel, sardines, and tuna. Les Mouettes d'Avor. Apparently, they're named for a football club that one of the owners was on back in the 20s or 50s or something. I am not a fan of French football, so I could not verify that, but that is what it says on their website. They, like many of these companies, are harvesting the products at their peak. They're getting them at the ideal season, and mackerel's kind of a tricky fish. You know, like we said earlier, it's oily. It degrades incredibly fast. You can have mackerel that's superb one day, 2 days later it is garbage. And I don't know if you've ever bought fresh mackerel. There's a reason you don't see fresh mackerel at fish markets very frequently, and it's exactly that. But they get the mackerel in, and then they cook it essentially with some bouquet garni, you know, some aromatics, carrots, parsley, celery, and these flavors really come through. It's fishy in a good way, but it's delicate at the same time. It's tender. I think that this is a really tasty product. I also think that with the brightness and acidity of it, this with the vermouth is pretty spectacular. So I would absolutely welcome your thoughts on this and any experiences with mackerel previously, or thoughts on this with the vermouth or with the Chicory.
Yeah, so Adam says he soaked up the mackerel can liquid with bread, and it's an 11 out of 10. He just absolutely loves that there. We did have a question about vermouth in general. Did the Spanish pair red vermouth and white vermouth with different conservas?
In terms of like specific pairings, I do not know. My gut was potentially to do a white vermouth. And for those of you who aren't familiar with vermouth, there's really like 3 vermouths, and there's probably more than that. You know, you've got red vermouth, which we're drinking tonight, right? And then there's red vermouth's what we use in a Manhattan. You know, it's one of the more common aperitif mixers that's out there. And then white vermouth, dry vermouth, which is traditionally white, is what we would put into a martini. If you were, I believe it was with Winston Churchill, it may have been one of the quotes incorrectly attributed to him, but he said the proper way to make a martini is to pour gin in a glass and then point a bottle of vermouth at it. If he didn't say that, I wouldn't put it past him, but it's a great quote. I like to actually put a splash in there, but dry vermouth, you know, it's not dry in the way a dry champagne is. It's still got some residual sugar. But then there's white vermouth, which tends to be a little more of that aperitif style. It tends to have closer to the sugar level of the red vermouth, and often that would be consumed on the rocks, maybe with a twist of lemon or a twist of orange. I think I debated heavily just doing 2 vermouths with this tasting because I thought it would be really fun. I also debated doing an off-dry or sweeter white vermouth with next week's tasting, but ultimately decided to go with the sherry. That said, I think that the white vermouth would work really well with some of the stuff we're doing next week. And I think that it would work exceptionally well with probably the sardines, both of them, and the mackerel, possibly the tuna, though it may be a little bit outclassed by the salmon.
Well, people are absolutely loving the mackerel. Question that's probably more for Zach that was asked in the chat, and I know he answered, but someone did ask if there is a good cheese pairing with these canned fish. So Zach, if you wanna talk to the masses about that.
Yeah, I actually loved in the comments Gabe, who's already on from Wild Fish. He mentioned their smoked salmon with Havarti, which sounds delicious. I mentioned Toma, and so I think there's kind of 2 ways you can go. You either want to stay really mild, something like a Havarti or Toma. If you want something that's a little bit more, you could do like a Piave, but something very similar, simple, Asiago, straightforward types of cheeses. The other option is if you really want to try something a little bit more challenging and unique, you can try to match fish's intensity with stinky cheeses. So it really plays up the salinity and the funk of the experience, but I've had times where you see a brie at a piece of fish or a stinky cheese, which often has some of those briny smells and flavors with the fish. They can be really nice. It can also go too far very quickly. I think that you need to really know the ripeness of your cheese and know what you're doing. But I'm thinking of like Taleggio and different canned mussels and things I've seen before. You can get really funky and try some cool experiments that way.
Perfect. There's also a question, is there anything to be said about kippered herring? That one from your family, Will.
I'll let Gabe talk about that a little bit when we get to the salmon. We carry a smoked herring from from wild fish. And I love smoked herring. I mean, my family loves smoked herring. I've been known to take smoked herring as a snack when skiing or camping or hiking, which can work out very well if you're on a ski lift and you just need to eat something quickly. And as I learned one time, very poorly, and when you're somehow turning and during the course of the day, you bump into something and your ski pole cracks a can of smoked herring open in the pocket of your ski jacket. And then you get on a gondola with 15 other people and everybody starts looking around wondering what the hell is that smoky, fishy smell and where the fuck is it coming from? So it's a great product. These wild fish cans, they're much more durable than the one that cracked open in my pocket that fateful day in California. But, and for those of you who may not know the term, kippered is another form of saying smoked. There are a lot of terms that may get thrown around and feel like, oh, one time a gentleman came in the store and he said, do you have any pilchards? You know, it's another way of saying sardines. I don't remember the scientific name off the top of my head, but it's something pilchardus or pilchardus something, and so that's where that's coming from. And, you know, kippered is the way of saying smoked. Then you can get into like lox and gravlax and what the difference is between those things. Is smoked salmon lox, is it not, etc. Lots of fun niche terminology to argue over as you're eating canned fish and drinking vermouth.
The scientific name is Sardina pilchardus.
There we go. Hence the name pilchards.
Perfect.
So let's move on to the Ramon Pena yellowfin tuna. This is a fun one. I mean, it is, because it's yellowfin, it's more like what we're used to in canned tuna, generally being, you know, skipjack or yellowfin or something of that nature if you were to go buy canned tuna at the grocery store. But again, canned in olive oil, it's a whole piece of tuna, you know, instead of being shredded, as Zach always likes to point out with the Ortiz, bonito. And it's really nice. I mean, it's just, it's a nice, dense, meaty tuna. It's quite toothsome, I would say. This one may benefit from just a pinch of salt, or if you've got, you know, a potato chip can also be an excellent thing to snack with some of this stuff. And for those of you who got the Ventresca add-on, I think that the contrast between the two of them is really going to be incredible. We're actually, Zach and I are sharing some yellowfin Ventresca. And for those of you who don't know, Ventresca is the belly of the tuna. It's like the bacon of the sea. If you've gone to sushi and you go and you get toro, which you know is the fatty tuna, that's from the belly. If you get some hamachi sometime and you get it and it's super, you know, yellowtail. Yellowtail is a jack. It's a different species of fish. It's not a tuna. But the belly of a lot of animals, it seems, whether they're, you know, mammals or fish, seems to be a little bit richer, and it's no exception for tuna. Zach and I have this yellowfin Ventresca, and for those of you who got the add-on, that's a bonito Ventresca, or a white tuna Ventresca, and the yellowfin Ventresca is dense, it's meaty. It's still got more fat than the yellowfin tuna, but the Espinolera Ventresca is like, it's like eating velvet. We Adam and a couple, John, who were on at the beginning, you know, they said they weren't sure what to think of it. I was like, "Have you opened the cans yet?" And we were talking about the tunas. That stuff is like the single best can of fish I've ever had in my life, just on its own. It's really spectacular, and I love the textural contrast between the two.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to interrupt. I always love to tell the story. We had, like, not just some Ventresca at the store when we bought this other one. We arguably had too much of the Ventresca we were selling at the time. But Will and I both tasted this product and we're like, yeah, those are going on closeout, and we're going with this Ventresca. The, like, texture was just so unctuous. It's really remarkable, and I think for me, this is where the chocolate shines the most, because you have so much density and fat and silkiness that that, like, burst of bright acid and fruit is really fun. I'm crazy about Ventresca. I think it's such a fun texture and so silky. It's not what you expect to get out of a canned fish usually.
And you'll probably find that the chocolate goes very well with the standard yellowfin as well. I mean, they're in the same world. So do we have any thoughts or questions on that, or about Ramon Peña in general? I haven't really talked a ton about them. Real quick before we get into that, they're up in Galicia, so the part of Spain that's just north of Portugal, and that's where Galicia and Basque Country is where the bulk of this canned seafood comes from in Spain, and then Porto is probably responsible, you know, from Lisbon to Porto and Portugal, responsible for a large majority of the other canned products in the Iberian Peninsula, but you know, most of the canning is not done on the Mediterranean side. They're fishing the North Sea, they're fishing the English Channel. Ramon Peña, Conservas de Cambados, which we'll feature next week. Ortiz, a lot of these companies are based right in that kind of corner of Spain, north of Portugal, and near a couple rivers and estuaries that are famous for mussel farming, and also like the raising of cockles. Some of these farmers get like tiny plots of land. Ramon Peña, like, again, their focus is primarily on shellfish, sardines, and tuna. That's the name of their game. They've been around since the 20s, I want to say, and they have a few different lines. We've got their silver line here with the tuna, but the sardines and padron peppers is the gold line. And again, a lot of times what will differentiate between like Espinola's premium line and their standard line and Ramon Peña's silver line versus their gold line, sometimes it is just the size of the product. Like in a mussel, you want mussels to be bigger. The Spanish are looking for the largest, most plump mussels in the can. So if you can find mussels that are, you know, six to a can, those cans are going to cost $20, $15 to $20. If there are maybe 12 to 13 mussels to a can, those will be a little bit less expensive. The mussels themselves don't taste that different, in that case, in my experience, but the size is really important. I do think that there is a flavor difference in these tiny sardines from a regular sardine.
Couple quick questions for you, Will.
Yes, sir.
Number one, should people who got the tuna add-on be eating it now and comparing it to the yellowfin, or would you say go at your own pace, or what's your recommendation there?
I mean, I definitely would compare and contrast them, but if you don't want to open it, you know, that can, it's going to be good for a long time. Conservas are one of the few products that we sell that actually gets better with age once we get it. You know, when we get a wine, you know, we're not truly aging it much anymore. When we get cheeses, sometimes they get better, but it's over the course of a couple weeks, usually. But Conservas you can hold on to. People buy vintage sardines. I don't know if any of you knew of this concept, but the Spanish and the French will attest that many of these canned fishes, especially those canned in olive oil, actually get better with age. So if you wanted to take that Ventresca and just park it somewhere and open it up in, 2 years, if you can wait that long, I can't. And my kids would certainly discover it and then shove the whole thing in their face, along with any other canned fish and chocolate bars that they encounter. By all means, you can definitely hold on to it. You don't have to try it tonight. Please enjoy it at your own pace. But I do think it's a fun contrast between the two types.
Cool. One other question that came up, and I know Zach answered in the comments a little bit, but after these are now open and exposed, do you need to eat them all tonight? Do they last a few days? What's the best way to store these?
Ideally, you're not supposed to store them in the can. I do it all the time. It is yet to kill me. Maybe it has made me slightly more deranged, but I don't have a long way to go downhill in that respect. I was deranged before, and I'll continue to be so, regardless of whether or not I eat fish stored in an open can. I will keep many of these things open for several days. If you were to put them in a ramekin or a jar, especially if you've got one of the ones in oil and you can get it covered in oil again, I mean, you could top it off if you want to. If you put this in a glass container or a ramekin or something, like these sardines or anything else in olive oil, and then cover it with olive oil so it's completely submerged, you've given, it's probably good for a week, 2 weeks, if it's actually completely covered like that. That said, none of these products would last that long in my fridge.
Perfect. Only other thing is a lot of people are now in search of their birth year sardines. So if you have any leads, let them know, and maybe we can, Zach says we're going to have the StockX vintage canned fish market soon.
That is a pricey game to play in, actually. I don't know what some of the costs of, even King Oscar, which you may have seen at the grocery store, right? They do vintage sardines occasionally, and they're a pretty penny from what I understand. If anybody's really, really into this weird niche of canned fish, specifically canned sardines, there's a blog out there that's called, Mouthful of Sardines or something?
I'm gonna look it up to double check.
It's a guy, all he does is rate sardines. That's it. It's like, it's so niche, it makes us look very mundane.
It is Mouthful.
Yeah, Mouthful of Sardines. He doesn't even get that, like, he's not as poetic as you might expect from someone who's that into sardines, but he rates hundreds and hundreds of cans of sardines. He writes a little blurb about each one. It's weird.
He's at 617 right now.
617. All right. So, without further ado, I would love to introduce Gabe Stoltz from Wildfish Cannery. I could have very easily just done a whole lineup of European canned fish. I recently started selling Wildfish products. I think they're absolutely delicious. I also think that America has we have a long, in relative terms, a long history with canned fish. It was a huge industry on the East Coast and on the West Coast. As I allude to in the menu and in our blog, Cannery Row didn't get its name for nothing. I've been fishing on Monterey Bay. I've seen sardine boats out there. It was a force in American industry, and it fed a lot of people. And it's cool that there are still some companies that are out there, carrying on that legacy. And now in the case of Wildfish, doing it with sustainable products, but also products that taste great. So please, Gabe, take it away. Tell us a little bit about Wildfish. Tell us a little bit about your approach to smoking.
Hey, yeah. So, our cans, we've got a deep history. You talk a lot about, the European market being, at the top of the cans, but, Prince of Wales has had, smokehouses commercially taking out, fish since the late 1800s. So, we've got a rich history here as well that we really try to emphasize. The sea has a lot to offer, with what we've got going on. We're bringing fish in, down on the docks, landing fish from our local hand trollers, from our persainers, some of our power trollers. We're down there, at every opening for the kings, for the cohos, really trying to bring this beautiful product out into the market and go, hey, America isn't just tuna fish. So it feels good to be a part of this, and just being able to be put out there up against these other kinds of fish. I know that our product is a little bit different. So many other products are emphasized on the simplicity of it, which we don't quite do, because of our smoke. But we do offer our classic. Our classic coho is, going out there trying to be, just as comparable to any other European fish, with just a simple salted.
Cool. And Gabe, how'd you get into smoking fish so my understanding is you're the smoke master at Wildfish, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I've been a chef for 16 years. Grew up in the Northwest. I've worked for James Beard Award winner Mark Bitterman. Did salt infusions with him for a few years. But really, farm to table, organic foods was a big part of my upbringing. I ran a farm to table kitchen for 10 years. And really, this is the source of food. Coming to Alaska, it brings us to the most fresh fish that you could ever have your hands on. But it's a great opportunity. But also, the owner of Wildfish, Matthew, and I, we've been friends since we were 12 years old. So it kind of brings a full circle. After we've both been out in the food industry to come back and join forces at something like this.
That's very cool. And it looks to me like your growth of late has been pretty explosive. I think the Wildfish was started in 89 or something like that, or
87. Yeah.
87?
Yeah. So yeah, in 87, Matthew's grandmother started it. And we've always been kind of just a local sustainable thing, surviving off of the local sports fishermen, and just getting our feet, in the last 4 years. We've really kind of just changed up our game, really gotten more into the commercial side of things, and just wanted to go, what, we've got this great product that, we can easily see this coming out and being in things like wine bars and, going into even breweries and being paired with beers. That's some things that we can see, being with this product. It's such a versatile product. You can have it in your pocket on a hike. You can take it hunting. You could do just about anything. I'm an avid skateboarder, and I take this stuff with me on skateboard trips. It's just in my bag, and I can crack it open and eat it as it is, or, eat it on a sandwich. It's just easy.
Can you do it?
That's some 1987 bottles that you're
down a can of salmon at the same time?
Sorry, there was two people talking there at once.
I
Repeat your
said
question, Will.
do a kickflip and down a can of the salmon at the same time.
Oh yeah, actually, we were just making a joke about that. How we wanted to do a photo shoot of me doing a hand plant on a can.
Love it.
Yeah. We're thinking about fun things to do when the season's over here in October. I only work 5 months out of the year here, so just in the peak seasons when we're landing fresh fish constantly and having a lot of stuff to smoke. Yeah. So I mean, it's a nice thing to be able to have such hands-on, you know. You never really see, how much work goes into one can of fish, the amount of hands that go onto it, the amount of love that goes into the product. Everything's carefully bought and really taken care of. So it's a treat.
We do have a question in the chat for you. So someone asks why the prices of smoked fish escalated so much and has become even more difficult to find lately. I don't know if you have insight on that.
I'm not sure. I believe it might be just because of the labor. The labor that's involved. We have an interesting time. Putting it together. We definitely have a lot of people putting out there. Coming up and being in the fishing industry and trying to be a part of it. But, the locals have such a rich, hands-on with the fish, processing fish. So, like all of our guys that fillet, grew up here on the island. But, getting into the foodie crowd, getting the people up here that want to be smoking and want to be in hands-on like that. You have a small amount of people that are into that. So the job market isn't a big job market, but it's a very hands-on thing. We're from cutting it to brining it to smoking it, to getting it in the can. Your hands are on it, 7 or 8 times. Which sounds kind of crazy, but in a whole production logistics thing, it is kind of crazy. So, unfortunately that gets passed over in the can process.
There are a couple questions off of that. So number one, how many folks do you need to fish and process? And then also if you have like a high level summary of the smoking canning process that you guys do as a company.
So we employ throughout the year, we have about 10 employees. During peak summer time, we end up having upwards of 17 or 18 employees. And that's to be cutting all of the fish. I mean, obviously fresh fish needs to be processed the day it comes in. So at that, some days you have to have 4 people filleting fish, all day long. The different fishing vessels that we have about 12 different seining ships, and just as many local hand trollers that are out there pulling fish in for us. So there's quite a few hands, in getting it. As for the smoking and canning process, our cans, each batch, we smoke in 150-pound batches, and those have a 14-hour brine on them, and they're canned they're smoked for 5 hours, and then canned up. So that alone, each can about has 15 hours put into each one. So
yeah, which is, that's a far cry from an industrial smoking process. Even if you were doing industrial smoked salmon, where you might be, I don't know, but knowing how processed stuff tends to work, I would guess that they're running stuff through smoke in a couple hours, if they're even doing natural smoke at all, and Gabe makes a great point here that all of these products are hand packed. You don't get sardines placed in a can that beautifully if they're not packed. This salmon, one thing that blew me away before I'd even tasted it, I'd seen some pictures of this canned salmon. I'd heard about it. I saw some pictures of it. You open up the can and it looks like this beautiful amber, mahogany product. Get it in from sunlight, it really like shines in a way that looks like when I've smoked salmon at home and I just take it off the smoker and I'm like really proud of the way that the color turned out. That's what you see when you open up one of these cans of Coho or King from Wildfish. And
Oh, thanks so much. I really take pride in that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really impressive to me, and the flavor shines through. It's not just a pretty face. I opened up the can and I was like, wow, that's one of the better looking cans of fish I've ever seen, period, and by far the best canned salmon I've ever had.
Awesome.
So we wanted to feature it. We're happy to have you here with us, and I think that it's really cool what you guys are doing. They also make a bunch of other stuff I haven't even tried. They've got a smoked octopus. They've got a smoked gooey duck.
Yeah, someone had talked about our herring. So we don't use a small herring like most canned herrings that you find. We do use like a full size herring. It's some of our herring are 10 inches. So you find that the larger herrings kind of have more of a richer flavor, stronger flavor. So it's a lot, to me, it's really comparable to the mackerels that you're having out there. But because ours is a brine smoked and it's not packed in oil like so many others that you'll find, I believe that it's very versatile for what it is. But as for anything, you're having that really more aggressive flavor. So it's not for everyone. And that's, kind of the nice thing that's with our salmon is even if you don't like fish, you can open that up and be like, okay, yeah, that's actually really a different product.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. I can't thank you enough for joining us all the way from Alaska. I know it took you a long time to get here on Zoom, but it's cool of you to be doing such great work. It's especially heartwarming when any of our producers are willing to hop onto a call with us and talk to our friends and our people about what they do. That's we seek to make connections. We seek to make connections between people like you, Gabe, and the people who are on the other side of this call trying a bunch of these fish for the first time. And it's awesome for us to kind of be the broker of that, of that passion.
Oh, most definitely.
Gabe, we do have one more question that came in. Someone asks, am I correct that there used to be many more smokeries out there? Do you know the historical knowledge of that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the Prince of Wales Island is the site of the first smokehouse that was doing commercial stuff in Alaska in the late 1800s. Unfortunately, with the high, amount of processing takes, just the energy that it takes, we do see a lot of canneries closing down. The fishing industry doesn't quite, go that way. The demand for most fish, is frozen fillets. So unfortunately, you see a lot of different processing facilities switching to that because it's a higher profit margin for them. We actually have the beautiful thing being on a remote island. fresh fish is really hard to get out. So the canned salmon is the most viable thing for us to be doing.
It's awesome. Thanks so much, Gabe. And without further ado, I think we're just gonna, any other questions about that? Otherwise, Zach's gonna talk a little bit about chocolate. I think, like we said, everybody's been on this call before. So, or one of our Zoom things. So we're not gonna do, as much on it as we might normally, but please give us any questions. Zach's gonna talk just a touch about wrapping it up in a little cocoa.
Yeah.
I do just. Was there a question?
Nope, no question. You are good to go.
Okay, so the one thing, before I jump into chocolate, I do want to say, just echo what everybody else has been saying about how wonderful Gabe's products were. My nickname's been Bear for a long time, and my inner grizzly truly comes out with those salmons. I've eaten a handful of those cans since we've brought them in, and I really can't get enough. But so thanks for being on the call, and thanks everybody for enjoying the fish. But I want to talk about chocolate, right? It's definitely a strange kind of progression from fish to chocolate, but we never like to not talk at least about, a little bit of chocolate to end it with a sweet treat. We have a very specific vision with our chocolate, and we're always trying to accomplish kind of a similar thing that we just did with Gabe. We want to connect you to these people. People work so hard to make our food, and we found in our learning about chocolate, as I mentioned several times in these tastings, that those are people who are so often marginalized, the growers, and especially in that region. And so, chocolate comes from this beautiful and very narrow band, and we want to tell as many stories from that 20 degrees north or south of the equator as we can. We've loved working with Manoa because they're at that direct source, just like Gabe was talking about, being where the fish come from gives them an advantage of fresher, more amazing product. And it's the same with Manoa, right? They're not getting beans from across the world. They're able to have an effect on the growing conditions, I bet, in certain cases. This chocolate, Manoa in general, I always find it has such a floral note to it. I personally drank the vermouth in my glass, but I bet the vermouth and the chocolate would actually be really nice for a pairing. I don't know if anybody's tried that yet. I see a couple nodding heads. So, yep, there we go. Lisa likes it. I think that the silkiness of the vermouth with the chocolate, it's almost a no-brainer. So I really encourage you to all try that. Just a quick moment about kind of how much fun Will and I have had exploring chocolate and bringing it to you. At this point, we have the largest selection of craft chocolate in the state, and it allows us to, discover so many amazing flavors. And the range of chocolate has just been phenomenal. I was listening to Will explain some of our selection to some customers tonight, and it's just real fun. If you want to take a tour through Nicaragua, you can use Frisson in Copenhagen and see all these expressions that he's done. Or with Maru, you can go through southern Vietnam. Quantu from Montreal does a great job with a lot of Peruvian villages. And so it's just such a fun way to kind of take a trip. And I think right now, while we're all stuck in our different environments, taking trips brings on a whole new layer of meaning and necessity. And so I hope you will continue to travel in whatever way we can travel together and continue to try these chocolates. And, we really just thank all of you for allowing us this opportunity to connect you to these growers and these producers. And hopefully we'll find some chocolate guest stars to come on soon. If anybody would like, one of the things I don't think I've ever mentioned about Manoa in this group is that they have a fantastic YouTube station, a collection of videos, I believe, going over 2 seasons at this point, where they really will take you step by step through how chocolate's made. And there's so much work that goes into chocolate production. It's really just been so mind-blowing and eye-opening to me. And, you know, similar to the conversation about the price of smoked fish going up, because of how many hands have to touch it, you know, beautiful chocolate takes so much work and so much more love is poured into it than in the case of a Hershey bar that I hope it's reflected in the taste. I certainly believe it is, and you know, I hope you guys will continue to explore our chocolate wall, and we'll certainly highlight some more producers in the coming months. What questions do people have about chocolate or about pairings or fish? Does everybody sign up for the second one coming up, where we're going to dive into mollusks and cephalopods?
Doesn't look like any questions right now, but I do want to applaud all you people who are feeding your cats and then sharing their Instagram stories and allowing us to then reshare them. They are wonderful. I think I'm very happy to see that cat Instagram has reached Mongers, and so we applaud. And anytime you want to show them off eating some of our fish, we'd love it.
Disagree. Seriously though, we thank you for joining us. If you are interested in next week, we're going to be doing 2 different types of squid, different flavor profiles of squid, razor clams, mussels, and something else awesome that's escaping me right now. Oh, octopus. Duh. One of my favorite things. With that, I know people were like, what about the chocolate and fish pairing? We are going to next week. The chocolate bar you will get next week if you sign up for the pairing is the Fossa Shrimp and Bonito chocolate bar. So it's the only bar we have that naturally is pairing fish with chocolate. It's definitely out of the price range of what we normally can include in one of these pairings, but we figured we weren't going to sell 100 tickets, and the people who are into this kind of stuff are big fans, so we thought we'd do something fun. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Love to answer any more questions you've got, if you have them, and if I can hopefully answer them. But we appreciate you. We appreciate you coming to these tastings, hanging out with us, and just being a part of our lives in general right now.
We do have a question that came in. So since the vermouth paired so well with many of these canned fish, could port also be a good pairing for some of these?
For some of them, yes. I think that part of why the vermouth works well is because, for me personally, because we're drinking it on the rocks. It's chilled. I don't normally serve port as cold as I might serve this vermouth. I don't think you would get anything that were bad, and it would really depend on the port. I mean, port, like a more musty, tawny port might work a lot better than a super bright, sweet, young ruby. I think the right kind of tawny port could certainly work, with the salmon or with some of the other stuff that's not as delicate. But please try that. If you find a good pairing in port with some of this stuff, I would love to know, because I love port and I love canned fish.
Nick and Liz mentioned that they're going to try the smoked salmon with bourbon at some point. Not currently, but they think that could potentially work well together as well.
I mean, you're not going to go wrong there. I don't have to taste them together to know that that's going to work just fine.
Perfect. Looks like that's it for the questions today.
Cool. Who else? Did anyone drink the liquid that was left in their can, like my kids do?
like I said, I basically just kept dunking bread in that mussel liquid because it's insane.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, it's good stuff. Like I usually Zach does these at the store and I do them at home. And I had to do this one here because I can't do this tasting without my kids just trying to attack me. Like they would eat this can of sardines in 4 minutes, and then they'd crush the mackerel. One of the kids would drink all the brine. You know, it's madness. It's like being ransacked by, you know, just two very aggressive people who are 36.5 inches tall.
Perfect. Yeah, a lot of people who soaked up the different oils in bread. The Padron sardines went well with an old-fashioned Mongers soaked up in the bread from Jameson. He loved the Padron peppers. So, yeah, everyone seems to be super happy with using that bread.
Did anyone get a spicy one?
Does not look like it. It looks like someone has one hidden somewhere.
Seems like the next couple cans will all be spicy then.
None of the ones I've had, like, you know, they don't have enough Padron in them to like get hot.
Oh.
Dave's insanity sauce, that'll do the trick.
No, I was trying to get you to type things that I was saying.
Oh.
That's okay. I'll try to type.
I'll bring my keyboard next time.
Cool. All right.
Cool.
All right, everybody.
Thank you so
guys
much. Gabe, if you're still on the call, thank you. See you, but we appreciate it. You guys rock.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Hey, Will, real quick, I know I mentioned it before to you, but there's that restaurant in Boston that basically just, they upcharge the can like $5 and they give you like bread, salt, like a pickle. You guys should do that once you start doing stuff in-house. Crack cans there in there for you, and
it would go a lot better if we could open bottles of wine in here, unfortunately. The market for people who just want to eat canned fish on its own is not as big as the market who wants to eat that in a tapas bar situation.
True.
But,
I think there's also one in Chicago called Pork